Welcome to the first test of our molds. We already finished these 3 molds in 3 separate tutorial videos on how to make them, and this video will be all about testing them. The first part will be to prepare the molds for the casting. You have to make sure your stuff is not sticking to the silicone, and to secure that you need some sort of mold release. One way is to use these silicone sprays. Another way would be using talcum powder and to brush it on. In this case we will work with epoxy to test these molds. So with epoxy I like to use mold release silicone spray. Make sure you use it properly as stated on your can, and also wear your gloves and give all your molds a little touch of the mold release. For the cut open mold you can pry it open a little bit and spray inside. Here you have to do your both parts separate, and now everything is covered with the silicone. I used to use my finger and to wrap it all around to make sure every spot is hit. So I just push in my fingers and wrap around everything to make sure I have a nice even coat all around. Now I put these on the radiator to make sure they are a little bit warm, and they need about half an hour to dry off. So what you want to make sure about using silicone spray is that all the solvent is evaporated and is off the surface. You just want to have the silicone oil as a thin coat on the surface. So here I got my resin bottles fresh from the radiator to heat them up a little bit. See, the stuff is pretty liquid. Now we need a small mixing container. For this little test I think these disposable shot glasses will do well. So this is a 1:2 mix ratio, so I want to make about 15 grams of material. Always make sure you have some paper towels on hand to catch up some dripping stuff. You don't want to mess around too much. Okay, that's a little bit more than 11. Then we need our hardener, and I use these as mixing sticks. They are already coated, so I don't have any problems with the wood and the moisture, and I use it as a little guide to make the pouring a little bit. Always make sure to close your containers. So regular we have about 40 minutes of pot life with this stuff. In this case it's a little bit warmer, so I would say we have half that time, so about 20 minutes. And then I slowly start to mix it. So I hope you can see it. The stuff is not clear. You carefully mix it until it becomes clear again. So that's absolutely normal, that your resin, when you mix the parts together, in the first case starts to look a bit foggy. Scrape a little bit on the sides to get everything mixed in, and when it's totally clear you know that all the stuff is already mixed. Then I like to scrape off the mixing stick to get that stuff really mixed in. Now we need some tint, and this time we use some orange. Just a few drops. Carefully mix that in too. The molds are already on the radiator, waiting for their use. It's good to warm the molds as well. So if you have the warm resin and pour it in a cold mold, yeah, your resin starts to cool down very fast, and the advantage you want to have from using warm resin is done. So make sure you warm up your molds as well to ensure a good flowing and to get all the details. So a little bit of bubbles have formed in this. I will put this now on the radiator to heat it up again and give it a little bit of time. So we have our 20 minutes running now, and I want to make sure to use about 5 to 10 minutes to give the bubbles a little bit of time to raise. So the 10 minutes are over. Take my glasses, got my resin, and grab my warmed up molds. So I think let's start with the easiest of them, the open face mold. Make sure you can see no bubbles left, and then carefully pour it in until it's just about to reach the top. Then you can squeeze it a little bit to make sure that you don't have any bubbles that were caught on any edges or so. And that's for this. Then we need some rubber bands for the other mold. I think 2 will be enough. It's always good to have a lot of rubber bands for your molds. I pre-stretch them a bit. I don't want to be them too hard. I just want to make sure nothing gets loose. One on the top, one more in the middle section, lower middle section. Then we take our resin, carefully pour from the side and let it flow in. Make sure if you pour too much, you can clog the filling spot, and then you won't get more resin in, and it becomes more complicated to fill the rest of the mold. Here you can also fill a little bit more in, so you have a little bit of material left on top. And last but not least, the squish mold gets filled the same way. So, and this you want to fill just right to the spot, to the line where your lid will sit. Maybe it's a little bit of tweaking forth and back to test this, and if it is filled that way, make sure none of the edges, that every part is fully filled, that you don't have any edges that might catch a bubble or so. Then search for your registration key and put it in. So before you fully press it in, I like to tilt the mold a little bit to this pouring vent here. So when I push down on this side, the material gets slowly pushed to the other side and then will be pushed outside here. So we now carefully push this down, and here comes the material up. Then I like to use 2 fingers and wiggle it a little bit, so this lid part can find its resting position and find all the details from our sculpting clay that we modeled in, all the little imperfections that help to key in this part perfectly, so everything sits where it needs to sit. So yeah, that's on how you cast this. The casting is done, and I'm pretty curious how it went. So we start with our open face mold. Let's see what we have here. Looking pretty good. So far I can't see any bubbles, but I think I might have used a little bit more of material. In such a case, you can see you have this little border here around. You can add some material when you do your next pour and just do some drips on top of that, let it cure, and then you can cut it flush. That's not a problem, but so far it's looking good. Let's see our second mold. Here we have a little bit of flashing, but that's not a huge problem. You just need to be careful. It's pretty thin and sharp edged. Yeah, here we can see a little bit of bubbles, but I'm not sure if these are bubbles from my cast or from the mold. I'm not sure if the mold was very good at this part here, but looking not bad. And now to our squish mold. This should pop right open. This is the leftover material. And the die should come out pretty easily. There we are. So yeah, this is our die, you see. I can remove the little bit of flashing by hand. This is our vent here. There's just one little bubble that we didn't get. So maybe a little bit of tweaking around how to insert the lid part. But I think without a pressure pot or vacuum chamber, the results look pretty good. And yeah, I think we can move on to clean these off and get them painted. And before we close this video here, just a little thing to the last. This is the first try that I did, so what you saw in the footage is already the second version. I was a little bit in a hurry and I thought it would go easier, and it seems I got some trouble with some bubbles here. Using the pressure pot made me a little bit lazy, so I need to calm down, take my time to do the good casts here. So just as a tip for you, take your time, take it slowly, do it step by step, and you will also see that you won't get the perfect result on your first try. So you need to find a way to work with your material over time. So do some tests, make some minor changes, be careful with it, be patient with everything, and this will help a lot to bring you along this path. So it will take a while to get your dice perfect, and this here will just be a general path to help you on the way, and to give you some advice and some tricks that you can use. And in the next part we want to talk about clean off and how to paint them. So I'm done with that so far, and hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and until that, happy dice making.